Fresh out of college, I had an idea. Let's all rent a place together, I suggested to my 3 roommates. The apartment I found was a steal, close to my new job, surprisingly cheap, and a world away from the cramped suburban box they'd been renting. It was a massive upgrade. For 3 months, everything was perfect. We were a happy little family. Then one day, I came home from work early and heard them talking in the living room. I looked it up. One of them said, her voice sharp with excitement. Rent in this neighborhood is insane. People pay a fortune. We're paying $4,000 for the whole place. What if we rent out the master bedroom for $4,000? Then our rooms are basically free. Another voice snapped, why does Grace get the master suite anyway? So what if she covers utilities? How much can that possibly be? I'm sick of her acting like she's better than us. The third one chimed in with a spiteful laugh. Just imagine her out on the street. It's hilarious. I smiled to myself on the other side of the door. You want to see me on the street? Too bad for you. I'm the owner. Inside, the voices kept going, blissfully unaware. Anyway, the lease ends in 3 days, someone said. We just tell her we're not renewing with her. Ha ha. Serves her right, another added. Always telling us what to do, acting like she owns the place. And that whole story about it being her relative's apartment, and that's why it's so cheap, the third scoffed. Who even believes that? I already contacted the landlord, the first said proudly. He said we can have it for next quarter. Same price. Just like that, my fate was decided, by people who seemed to have forgotten everything. How broke we were right after graduation. How none of them could afford anything near the city. How they'd been waking up before dawn to survive a brutal 3-hour commute of buses and trains from the suburbs. I couldn't stand watching them get crushed like that. So I lied. I told them a relative had a place available for cheap, and I invited them in so we could all breathe. The truth was, this apartment was a graduation gift from my parents. 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, in a prime building right next to my office. A 5-minute walk. My parents raised me to be discreet. Don't flash what you have. Don't make it a weapon people can point at you. So I never told my roommates I was the owner. I charged them a token rent, about $1,000 each, and covered utilities, building fees, everything else myself. And this was my reward. My kindness tossed back at me like garbage. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The laughter died instantly. The air went still. Mia was the first to recover. She pasted on a bright smile like she'd practiced it in a mirror. Grace. You're home early. Have you eaten? We made noodles. Come sit. She pulled out a chair like she was doing me a favor. Then she cleared her throat and launched into her performance. So, Grace? The landlord called. He asked if we're planning to renew. I twirled my noodles, saying nothing. She watched my face, trying to read me before continuing. We've decided not to. My hand paused mid-bite. I looked up, feigning confusion. We found something cheaper, she said, eyes darting away from mine. You only wanted to live with us because you couldn't handle the rent alone, right? So, if we leave, you'll probably move out too. Won't you? It's fine if you guys leave, I said calmly. I'll just take over the lease. I wrapped a big project at work, bonus is coming. Mia's smile faltered. But it's such a big place for one person. Isn't that kind of a waste? Listen, you should get a small studio. You'd save so much money. If I hadn't heard their scheme with my own ears, I might have believed she was being thoughtful. I'm used to it here, I said simply. Too lazy to move. Jordan, who'd been chewing silently, finally snapped. He slammed his chopsticks down. I was trying to be nice, but you're not getting it. So let me spell it out. We don't want to live with you anymore. We want you to move out. Don't force us to get ugly. I stared at him, my expression cooling. I found this apartment. I signed the lease. Why should I be the one to leave just because you say so? Sophie, who'd been quiet the whole time, finally spoke. Grace. Living with you has been really hard. If we keep this up, I'm afraid we won't even be friends anymore. Sophie was supposed to be my best friend. She'd had it rough growing up, Unstable home, the kind of chaos that makes you learn survival before you learn peace. She worked like hell just to stay in school. More than once, she'd needed someone to help her out of a bad situation. That someone had been me. I'd stayed up with her through applications and paperwork and nights when she didn't know where she'd be sleeping next month. I'd shared what I could for 4 years so she could graduate without drowning. And when graduation came, I couldn't bear the thought of her tiny frame being crushed on a 3-hour commute every day. That's why I suggested we live together. And I invited the other two so she wouldn't feel like she was accepting charity. Now she bit her lip, eyes glossy, voice soft. You always wanted what was best for me. Just agree to move out this one time. We can still be best friends. I looked at her, my face a blank mask. Then I smiled. Fine, I said. I'll move. Their faces lit up like Christmas morning. They started babbling about how we'd still be close, how this didn't have to change anything, how it would be better for everyone. I didn't want to hear another word. I turned, walked back to my room, and closed the door. The moment the lock clicked, I pulled out my phone and called my property manager. Mr. Henderson, I said evenly, the rent is going up next quarter. There was a pause. To what amount? To $6,000. I hung up and set my phone down like a final period. It didn't take long for a knock to rattle my door. I opened it to find all three of them standing there, faces twisted with fury. Jordan shoved me hard. My shoulder hit the edge of my desk. Pain flashed bright. You told the landlord to raise the rent, he hissed. Sophie's eyes were red like she'd been practicing tears. How about this, she said, her voice coated in fake reason. You talk to your relative. Keep it at $4,000. And give us the master bedroom? If you do that, we'll still live with you. I crossed my arms. And where would I sleep? On the couch, Mia said, like she was offering me a penthouse. So I pay rent to sleep on the couch, I said flatly. Jordan sneered. Get it through your head, you're the one begging to stay. Letting you have the couch is generous. Sophie linked her arm through mine, suddenly sickeningly sweet. We're best friends, Grace. Of course I'm looking out for you. I already found you a new place. It's move-in ready. Appliances, everything. Where? I asked. She covered her mouth, stifling a giggle. That little storage shed by the security booth at your office. The one they keep supplies in. 10 steps from work. Perfect for a workaholic like you. Mia laughed. Jordan snickered. Sophie acted modest, like she'd done me a favor. Don't forget to pay Sophie a finder's fee, Mia added, eyes shining. A place like that is hard to come by. I watched them, my blood turning to ice. Then Sophie's expression sharpened. Like she'd been saving the real punch. Grace, living with you has been exhausting, she said, voice suddenly serious. You're controlling. We can't hang anything on the walls. We can't decorate. If a single hair falls on the floor, you nag. We can't take it anymore. She inhaled, eyes hard. So you should pay our rent for next quarter. Consider it compensation for what you put us through. I almost laughed. I didn't want holes in the walls because the paint was custom. If it got damaged, it would be impossible to match. I didn't want them redecorating because their brilliant idea had been to mess with a structural wall to make the room bigger. And I complained about hair because they never cleaned the drain. Their hair had clogged the pipe so badly it flooded the apartment below us, and I quietly paid a fortune to fix it. In 6 months, the money I'd spent cleaning up their mess and covering costs far exceeded what they'd paid. And now they wanted me to pay them compensation. Hilarious. I looked at all three of them and let my voice go flat. Either you move out, I said, or you can pay the full rent yourselves. Then I shut the door in their faces. On the other side, I heard shouting, threats, insults, the kind of rage people throw when they think they still have power. The next day, I didn't get home until nearly 11. When I reached my door, I froze. My belongings were piled in the hallway like trash. Bags half open. Shoes scattered. Boxes crushed. I tried my code. Again. The lock wouldn't open. They changed it. A hot wave of fury rose so fast I felt dizzy. I pulled out my phone and called my dad. Dad, can you send a courier here right now? I need something delivered. Immediately. Then I started pounding on the door. The sound echoed down the quiet hall like a warning. Doors cracked open. Neighbors stepped out, irritated. Someone called security. The hallway filled with faces. Finally, the door clicked open. Jordan stood there in pajamas with a skincare mask on his face, frowning like I was the problem. What is wrong with you? I'm trying to sleep. I pointed at the pile of my life. What gives you the right to throw my stuff out? Sophie appeared behind him, casting a timid glance my way. Grace. We didn't have a choice. Please. Just. Give us a break. Then she shot a look at Mia. Mia stepped forward and raised her voice, loud and theatrical, aimed at the neighbors and the security guard. Everyone, please, be the judge, she said. We rent together, and she keeps bringing strangers home late at night. Noise, commotion. We can't sleep. We have to be up early for work. Then she turned to me, eyes wide with manufactured pity. We know you have a lifestyle. We're not judging. But we can't live like this. Please. We're begging you, find somewhere else to live. The moment the words left her mouth, the way the neighbors looked at me changed. Curiosity curdled into disgust, like I'd brought something filthy into their building. Sophie bowed to the crowd with a face full of apology. We're so sorry to disturb everyone. Her lease is up and we already told her we wouldn't renew with her. The landlord doesn't want her here either, but she refuses to leave. We had no other choice. Whispers rippled. She looks so normal. No wonder she's always out late. How unlucky to live on the same floor. A middle-aged woman pointed at me. Was it you blasting music and stomping around the other night? My whole apartment was shaking. I was out of town for work all last week, I said steadily. I got back yesterday. For half a second, guilt flickered across Jordan's eyes. Then he pointed at me anyway. Yes. It was her. Another neighbor stepped forward. And was it your hair that clogged the drains and flooded my bathroom downstairs? Sophie, the one with the longest hair, the one who always left it tangled in the drain like a net, froze for a heartbeat. Then she turned on me, voice loud and scolding. Oh my God, Grace. How many times have I told you to clean your hair out of the shower? Why don't you ever listen? Mia jumped in instantly. And she tried to mess with a wall in her room to make it bigger. We had to stop her. She wouldn't listen. The crowd's anger ignited like gasoline. She's a menace. Get her out. Security, do something. The security guard, seeing the mood turn ugly, grabbed my arm like he was about to pull me back. And in that moment, surrounded by my scattered belongings, 3 smiling liars, and a hallway full of strangers who'd already decided who I was, I realized they weren't just trying to steal my apartment. They were trying to steal my name. I'm the owner, I said, voice shaking with rage. You can't kick me out. Jordan laughed. Sure. And I'm the president. Sophie sighed like she was the reasonable one. Grace. I already contacted the landlord. He's on his way. If you leave now, you can keep a little dignity. If he comes and throws you out in front of everyone, it'll be ugly. Fine, I said through clenched teeth. Call him. I'd love to see him try. Who's looking for the tenant? A voice cut through. I turned. A guy with dyed blonde hair and a swagger like trouble strolled up, hands in his pockets, eyes sliding over everything like he owned the hallway. I'm the landlord, he said, smirking. You got a problem? My stomach dropped, not because I believed him, but because I understood immediately. This wasn't a real landlord. This was someone they'd brought in to play a role. I stared at him. My apartment has a property manager. Who are you? He lifted his chin, pointing a finger at my face. I heard all about you from these ladies. I don't rent to people who bring shame to a building. Take your junk and go. I held his gaze, ice cold. Do you even know whose name is on the deed? He snorted. My uncle's. Obviously. You think it's yours? Mia stepped in, voice syrupy. Grace, stop. The landlord is here. Just accept it. Then the blond guy's eyes narrowed like he remembered his next line. He pointed toward the open door behind Jordan. "Hey," he barked. "Where's the Lego set that was on the TV console? Limited edition. Worth a lot." I blinked. Of all the things to invent, that? "My little cousin liked it," I said, voice steady. "I gave it to her." His face twisted. "That's theft." "That's my uncle's property." "It's my property," I said. "And I can give it away if I want." Mia and Sophie jumped in, talking over each other like they'd rehearsed it. "We can prove it was there when we moved in," Mia insisted. "Grace, you need to get it back," Sophie said urgently, like she was saving me. "Stealing is a crime. If the landlord calls the police." "Call them," I said. My comm flipped a switch in the blonde guy. He lunged forward, stepping into my space, voice raised. "You think you can act tough? You owe money. Pay for what you stole, or you're going to regret it." I didn't flinch. "Touch me and you will regret it." Jordan muttered something to Mia and Sophie, eyes bright with hunger. Then he crouched and grabbed one of my suitcases. "I should check," he said loudly. "Make sure she didn't steal anything else." Before I could stop him, he yanked the zipper down and started digging. He pulled out a gold necklace, one my mom gave me for graduation, and held it up like a trophy. "Oh my God," he shouted. "That's mine. I lost it months ago." Mia's eyes lit up. She dropped to her knees and started rummaging too. She pulled out a designer makeup bag and a bracelet. "That's mine too," she said instantly. "She stole it." They stuffed my things into their pockets with the confidence of people who knew a crowd would believe them. And the crowd did. Neighbors leaned in. Hands reached. Someone muttered, "Maybe she really is a thief." Sophie turned to the onlookers with a small, polite smile that made my stomach churn. "If anyone here has had things go missing," she said gently, "you might want to check. Just in case." It was like she'd fired a starting gun. People surged forward, curious at first, then greedy. They pawed through my bags like I wasn't even a person. Something inside me cracked. "Stop," I shouted, trying to push through, trying to grab my own life back. A hand shoved me. I stumbled. Another shove sent me to the floor. My palms scraped against the hallway carpet. I saw a trophy from college, something I'd earned with late nights and stubborn pride, hit the ground and splinter. I saw the sweater my mom knitted me get yanked and stretched until a thread snapped like a heartbeat. I saw feathers spill from a torn jacket like a snowstorm of someone else's cruelty. My throat burned. "Stop. Please, stop." Sophie stood over me, looking down with wide, innocent eyes. And her lips formed two silent words, so soft only I could see them. "Serves you." That was when the courier arrived. "Excuse me," a young guy in a delivery vest called out, holding a large document envelope. "Is this for Grace Carter?" The crowd hesitated just long enough. I used every ounce of strength I had left to scramble up and lunge for the envelope. I ripped it open with shaking hands. Inside was a thick folder, copies of the purchase contract, property documents, and statements showing monthly building fees paid from my account. My name. My address. Clean, undeniable proof. I held it up high. "Look," I said, voice cutting through the hallway like glass. "Look at the name. I'm the owner." For one heartbeat, silence fell. Then the blonde guy snatched at the papers and laughed like it was a joke. "Fake," he said loudly, tearing at the folder. "You think you can fool me with some printed nonsense?" My stomach dropped as the papers ripped. Some neighbors looked uncertain. But more of them looked afraid of being wrong, afraid of stepping out of line, afraid of the loudest liar in the room. The blonde guy leaned in again, eyes cold. "Pay up. Or tonight gets worse." I reached for my phone. He slammed his hand down, ripped it from me, and hurled it to the floor. The screen spiderwebbed, then went black. Jordan and Mia moved in on either side, shoving me, talking over each other. "Apologize. Pay. Stop acting innocent." My hair was a mess. My arms stung. I was trapped in the center of their circle, and the building had become a courtroom where I'd already been convicted. Then a sharp, authoritative voice cut through the chaos. Enough. Everybody back up. 2 police officers stepped into the hallway. The crowd parted like water. The blonde guy switched masks in half a second, pointing at me with righteous outrage. Officer, she stole from my uncle's apartment, he said fast. We caught her. She even forged ownership documents and caused a scene. Sophie nodded urgently. Yes, officer. She's our former roommate. The lease ended and she refuses to leave. And now she's stealing. My hands shook with rage. That's a lie, I said. This apartment is mine. The lead officer crouched and picked up one of the torn pages from the floor, eyes scanning it carefully. Then he stood and looked at the blonde guy. You said you're the owner's nephew and you're authorized to manage this property, he said evenly. Show me the authorization. A copy of the deed. Your ID. The blonde guy's face flickered. My uncle is traveling? Your ID, the officer repeated. The blonde guy stalled, patting his pockets like he'd misplaced his entire identity. The officer didn't wait. He turned to me. Ma'am, besides these torn papers, do you have any other proof? I swallowed, thinking fast. Then I remembered my dad. He never did anything halfway. I pointed at the courier, who was still standing there, pale and wide-eyed. Officer, there were backup documents in that envelope. He said there were multiple items. The courier nodded frantically and opened his bag, pulling out another sealed section I hadn't noticed, copies, receipts, building statements, everything. The officer flipped through it. My name was everywhere. My address, clear as day. The blonde guy's face drained of color. He tried to bolt. The second officer grabbed him instantly and pushed him back, firm and fast. Everyone involved, the lead officer said, voice hardening, is coming with us. At the station, the lights were too bright. The air smelled like disinfectant and panic. They separated us. Took statements. Pulled footage from the door camera and hallway security. Everything was on video. The lock change. The pile of my belongings. The crowd. The rummaging. The pushing. The lies. When they played it back, nobody could hide behind acting confused. The blonde guy cracked first, spilling words like he couldn't get them out fast enough. It was Sophie, he said, pointing at her like she was a life raft. She came to me. Said there was a roommate who was easy to bully. Said she had money. Said nobody would protect her. The Lego thing was made up. The whole thing was her plan. Jordan and Mia jumped in immediately, desperate to save themselves. It was Sophie's idea, Jordan insisted. She said if we pushed Grace out and rented the master bedroom, we'd live for free. She told us to accuse her, Mia said quickly. She said a crowd makes you untouchable. She said nobody would punish all of us. Sophie stood there, shoulders slumped, like someone had cut her strings. I walked up to her, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I never treated you badly, I said quietly. Why did you do this? She lifted her head. And the face I thought I knew wasn't there anymore. It twisted with something raw and ugly, something I'd never wanted to name. Why? She spat, voice suddenly sharp. Because I couldn't stand you. My throat tightened. I helped you. Yes, she snapped, eyes bright with furious tears. You helped me. You took me to your home on breaks. You gave me a room with a lock that worked. You let me sit at your family table and listen to people laugh like life was safe. Do you have any idea what that felt like? Watching you have everything so effortlessly? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because any answer would have been turned into another weapon. She stepped forward, voice rising, almost frantic. You pretended to be just like us, but you were the owner the whole time. You charged us $1,000 like it was nothing. Like we should be grateful for your scraps. You acted like you were humble, but you were always, always, above us. Every rule, every no, every little correction. It was you reminding us we didn't belong. My chest went cold. So that was it. All my care, all my restraint, all my choices to make it feel equal, she'd taken them as a performance. As mockery. As charity she wanted to punish. And because you were jealous, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. You wanted to ruin me. Yes, she hissed. The last of her mask shattered. I wanted to see you fall. I wanted you to be lower than me. I wanted everyone to look at you the way they've looked at me my whole life. She stared at me like she wanted me to bleed from the inside. And something in me finally went quiet. I looked at her and spoke slowly, choosing each word like a lock clicking into place. Being poor and being hurt isn't your fault, I said. But using your hurt to drag other people down with you, this is. Then I turned to the officer. I won't settle, I said clearly. I want to press charges. All the way. The legal process moved faster than they expected, because there was video, paper trails, witnesses, and their own statements contradicting each other. Jordan and Mia were charged for what they did in that hallway and for the coordinated harassment. They'd already had prior trouble on record, and the judge didn't buy the wide-eyed innocence. The blonde guy, who wasn't anyone's nephew, went down for fraud, intimidation, and assault. Sophie faced the heaviest consequences. The court didn't care about her tears once the pattern was clear: coordinated framing, incitement, and escalation that nearly turned a building into a mob. When it was over, the apartment was mine again. Neighbors quietly returned what they'd taken, shame coloring their faces as they avoided my eyes. Some apologized. Some didn't. Some acted like it never happened. Jordan, Mia, and Sophie moved out with their bags and their bitterness. Jordan even turned at the door, chin lifted, still trying to salvage pride from the ashes. Don't get cocky, he spat. We'll find another cheap place. We don't need your stupid apartment. Mia muttered, yeah. Like you're the only one with options. I watched them go and felt nothing. Just a strange, clean emptiness. I thought it was done. I was wrong. A week later, my manager pulled me aside and handed me a thick stack of papers. My stomach dropped as I flipped through them. They were statements. Complaints. Pages and pages describing me as a bully in college. As controlling. As unstable. As someone who terrorized 3 roommates for years. My manager's expression was careful, the kind people wear when they want to look kind while protecting themselves. Grace, he said quietly, there are rumors going around the office. Clients have heard some things. It's not good for the company image. Why don't you take some time off? Let the storm pass. It's a lie, I said, voice tight. All of it? He sighed and lifted his hands like he couldn't help me. I believe you might be hurt by this, but the internet doesn't care. Right now the narrative is one-sided. I walked out of the building feeling like someone had poured ice water over my head. That night, Sophie, Jordan, and Mia went live on a popular social platform, faces bare, white t-shirts, red-rimmed eyes, sitting in a dim, cramped room like a staged confession booth. Sophie stared into the camera and choked out, "We've been bullied for 4 years. We almost couldn't survive it." Jordan jumped in, voice angry. Her family has money, so she ran the dorm like a dictator. We cleaned everything. She treated us like servants. Mia sniffed dramatically. She didn't just bully us, she controlled us. She wouldn't let us have relationships. She told us men were evil. But then she'd bring different men home all the time and keep us up at night. They tossed out story after story, each one wilder than the last, building a monster out of my name. They flashed selective screenshots, messages cut down to single lines, stripped of context, proof for people who wanted to believe. The comments exploded. Fire her. Expose her. Find her address. Within hours, strangers were digging through my life like my luggage all over again. My phone rang nonstop, unknown numbers, hateful messages, threats. My accounts got hacked. Someone posted my building online. Trash showed up outside my door. My name became a target people threw darts at for entertainment. I sat in my apartment, fists clenched so tight my nails cut my skin. You like live streams? You like acting? Fine. But if they wanted a show, I wasn't going to give them a screaming match. Not on their stage. In an emotional crowd, the loudest story wins. Calm truth sounds weak, unless it comes with proof so sharp it cuts through everything. So I went back to my old college. I found my academic advisor, A woman who'd watched me grind through finals and part-time jobs like my life depended on it. She was furious when she heard what was happening. "This is ridiculous," she said, voice shaking. "Grace, you were the student who helped others. You were the one who tried to quietly support Sophie without embarrassing her. You protected her dignity. You brought her home on breaks. You, of all people, accused of bullying? No." She posted a statement under her real name. Then another classmate did. Then another. People who remembered the truth started speaking up, and their voices were like stones dropped into a lake, small ripples at first, then widening. "I was in their class," one wrote. "Grace and Sophie were always together. I never saw Grace bully her. I saw Grace share food, share notes, share rides. I met Grace's parents," another posted. "They were kind. They always told Grace to look out for Sophie." "If this is bullying," someone said, "then I wish more people bullied me like that." At the same time, my lawyer and I released the first wave of evidence. The police report. The hallway footage. The ownership documents. The station recordings of their statements. The coordinated plan laid bare, step by step, with timestamps. The internet, hungry for drama, turned its head like a flock of birds. And this time, it saw them. The comments under their live stream flipped from sympathy to fury so fast it was dizzying. "Are you kidding me? They tried to steal her apartment. They framed her. This is evil." Platforms banned their accounts. Their victim narrative collapsed under the weight of reality. But behind the scenes, there was still someone pulling strings. The blonde guy, furious, exposed, and desperate, turned on them the way rats turn on each other in a sinking ship. I found out later they'd moved into his place after getting kicked out of mine, still chasing the fantasy of an easy win. Life there wasn't a fairy tale. It was chaotic, unstable, dangerous in the way poverty and bad choices can become a cage. Under pressure, everything cracks. And Sophie, who'd spent her whole life surviving storms, finally hit a breaking point. One night, something happened in that apartment that couldn't be undone. There were screams. A neighbor called for help. The police came fast. When the case went to court, the truth was brutal in a way no live stream could romanticize. Sophie had made choices that ended another person's life, and she would spend the rest of her life paying for them. Jordan and Mia were sentenced for their crimes, defamation, harassment, and what they did in that hallway, and their prior records didn't save them. When I walked out of the courthouse on the last day, the sun was bright and ordinary. People passed by laughing, carrying coffee, living their lives like my world hadn't been dragged through the mud. I stood there for a long moment, breathing in air that finally felt like mine again. And I understood something with perfect clarity. From now on, my kindness would come with edges. Not because I wanted to hurt people, but because I refused to ever be easy to hurt again.